before? Has everyone been here before? Okay. Because it's kind of like a building block that we do. And we kind of have been talking about a theory called self-determination theory throughout the months that I've been here. So we're going to kind of build and grow on that. But today I just wanted to start out with the idea of hope. You know, sometimes you just have to sit in the moment and say, you know, what is hope? Have I stopped hoping? One thing I learned about hope, I had been studying about hope and belief for probably maybe about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I took a whole day and just really studied on it. And it's the idea of what's really running through your mind, right? What is running through my mind? What am I like washing my brain with constantly? What am I telling myself? Am I telling myself my life is getting better? Am I telling me my community is getting better? Or am I triggered by the things that I'm seeing in my community? Am I listening to the news? Am I looking at the murders? And am I processing where I live from that narrative? And so today we're going to talk a lot about community, but I wanted to start out the whole idea of hope. My husband's here today, so I'm gonna. If he calls my bluff, he'll be like, "That's not true, right?" What is community? I think we'll start off with that. When we say community, we think of it, as it being objective, but really it's subjective because community is different for different people, right? So I always love this. This guy named Miles Monroe said this one time, and I thought it was amazing. But community, it starts out with individuals, right? And individuals get together and we have families. And then those families create neighborhoods. And the neighborhood creates your community. And then it turns into like a city. All of these little communities is your city. And then it turns into your state and your country, nation, and universe. You get what I'm saying? And it all started back with an individual. And I wanted to show you this because we're going to talk about individually today what it looks like when we're dealing with community. So we're going to talk about individual. Like, what is being an individual? Like, what is it to be me? What makes me me, right? I talked about that with some of my girls. I run a summer program. Me and my husband run a summer program at UMADOP, actually. And one thing I asked the girls is, what is life all about? And they looked at me like I was crazy. You know, you're looking at 13, 11, 12-year-olds. They're like, what is the meaning of life? And they looked at me like, a lot of them said, I don't know. Other ones said fun. And some of them brought in spirituality and said God. So when you think about individuals, we're all like puzzles. Each of us bring our own set of experiences, perspectives, talents, and strengths. And the biggest issue that we have is scarcity. When we feel like we are not going to be able to, our experience means something, and this is what I find out a lot in therapy. If I'm noticing people are coming to me, especially my self-harmers who cut themselves, I tell them, one thing I tell a lot of my self-harmers is I see you. We have a lot of kids that cut. And a lot of times, one of their issues is they feel like they're not being seen. Has anybody ever worked with a self-harmer or known self-harming, people who self-harm? The biggest thing is that they can't put a thing to their pain. So they don't have a brace, they're not in a wheelchair, they're not in something. So there's nothing to validate the pain. So they create it through self-harm, right? So a lot of times I'll have my self-harmers have a little rubber band, they'll pop their little rubber band because they love the feeling of that pain because it's emotional and they need to put something to it, right? Then you have perspectives, the way I see life, the lens in which I see life, right? So culturally, we know that's different. Even parts of town can be different. North side, south side, east side, how we see. What is our perspective, our talents, our gifts? I always say talents are always for someone else. There's not one talent I know that is not created for you to share with someone else. From an artist, I even have friends who know how to organize things. Like they'll come in, I'll give you their number if you need it. But they can organize things, they know how to put things in little boxes, they will take your house and make it amazing, right? That's a talent to share. And then your strengths, what you're really, really good at, right? So does anyone understand scarcity? Can you give me an example outside of what I'm saying, available resources in relation to human wants and needs? But what is the ideal behind scarcity? It,
It's not enough for
right.
everybody to have equal or enough of the item that they need.
Yes. What does that have right now in our community? I hate that this is moved out wrong, but we'll have to work with it. What does that kind of, let's talk about it in our community. Let's talk about it when it comes to wealthy and people who live in poverty within our community. What would be the issue with scarcity for someone who is in poverty?
Nothing to do, like parks, swimming pools.
Yes,
Activities, transportation,
yes,
general access.
absolutely. Access to stuff, parks.
Sometimes they don't know the difference between their wants and their needs,
That is very true.
and if they get it mixed up, and that's when your decision-making process becomes jacked up because you don't know what order everything comes in, if there is any order in your life.
Right. Because what's the difference between needing a pair of Jordans and needing a pair of shoes?
Something that my wife deals with all the time is awareness. Not being, when something's scarce or not available,
Yes.
you don't know it exists, even if it's there to help you.
Oh my goodness, that is very good. Yes. Access to information and knowledge that something is, that this problem could be solved. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. What scarcity do we have personally as people who are even people who work or considered middle class, or we do have resources? What is a fear? Time. Time. Sweet time. I'll be 53 in August, and I was like, boy, that went fast. That went so fast. I've been returning 50, and I'm like, boy, that 3 years, that's a big deal. So scarcity, exactly, limited time. So one thing we want to do is we want to talk about time. And when you talk about time, when you talk about resources, when you talk about those type of things, one thing that we always say, and I hear people say it a lot, is that when you're on your deathbed, the last thing you're going to think about is whether or not I got a report done. I'm going to think whether or not I spend time with the people who, what? Loved.
Community.
Yes.
Love.
Who you connected with, right? What did I do with my life, right? So I love Tina. Back in the day, it says, what does love have to do with it? And we talked about, she said it's a secondary emotion. And I think we all believe that is not true, right? It is not a secondary emotion. That love is really what drives us. Would you agree with that? Do you think that love drives us? So let me give you my definition of love. It is that you, hey, how are you? Good. Love in the Greek actually comes from a word that means to preference, right? The things we preference, the things that we put before. Like I told my girls the other day that I did not want to come to work, but because I love what I do and I know that I love the mission I have, I get up and do it because I preference that over my, me sleeping. So whatever I love is what I actually use my time on. Most of the time. Most of the time. So if I say what drives individuals, would you agree, and if not, tell me why, that we really do want affirmation acceptance overall as humans?
I think I agree with the idea that that probably is the driving factor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times, like in our world, in our community, and those types of things, it doesn't actually work that way.
Let's.
The flip side of just making just. Like, you know what I mean? It's the other
Yeah.
stuff.
I want, exactly. Go ahead.
It's like the other stuff takes up so much time.
Mm-hmm.
There is no time for this. It is a secondary emotion.
Okay.
Tina.
I got you.
Like it's the secondary thing.
But is that what creates that in America we are the most depressed and anxious people there is? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think love, it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
We can love what we do, but I think if you don't get the love back,
It wears you out. Yes.
and then that love's gonna wear out.
Yes. So a lot of times, like what you're saying, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just we're very, very fortunate, and I think we're also not money driven. I think to give up the idea of having the boats and the, and all the
Yes.
extra stuff.
Yes.
If we're truly,
Yes.
yes, if we're doing what we love, usually,
Yes.
it means nothing.
Me and Melissa were laughing that my brothers are in business and I'm in social services, and they've always thought that was funny. Like, okay, we'll live a certain lifestyle and then come visit us, right? Yeah, yeah, right. And there's a part of us that we have accepted scarcity, maybe to some extent, that there might not be enough, that we might be in a job that we don't have it, or the government cuts our program, and, am I going to be able to feed my family? Is Medicaid going to be there for me to be able to do things I do, right? Because we're driven by those kind of things, right?
But I feel like it's like your love language is different.
Yeah.
Your love language is different than your brother's. Your brother's love language is stuff,
Yeah,
and your love language is being fed by the contact, the emotion with people. So it's like, even if you're poor, because your programs are being cut and everything,
Yes.
you're still getting
fed.
Yeah.
Your affirmation and somewhat your affirmation and your acceptance is coming in the work itself.
it's
Yes.
coming from what you're doing.
Yes, so when James says, and I want to hear what you have to say too, when James says it gets hard sometimes because you're not seeing results. You're not getting that back. This is a job where you're feeding into people who will not necessarily give it back to you, which is one reason why I'm going to be working with us today. And it might feel like, I hope you're refreshed when you leave, because one of my ideas was making sure we, right, are in a system that we do get some feedback and we take care of ourselves, because affirmation, acceptance, regardless of whether or not we admit it or not, the work we do is important and we want it affirmed. And if whether we admit it or not, there's a level of acceptance that what I do is important. It just is.
And there's also that affirmation at some point, if you don't get that feedback, then right back to your hope at the beginning.
Yes.
A person like yourself can have all the same beliefs as you and have just missed that link to some affirmation.
Yes.
And fall out of hope.
Yes.
And then they won't be standing
Right.
like you are,
Right.
advocating and fighting.
Yeah, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and I promise you, having a spouse who does it too, where we can feed back at each other and remember, and I heard you hearing your wife, like, is this your wife right here? Yeah, hearing her say, hey, my wife does da-da-da, like having someone in your circle that does it too kind of helps you out. That even if you had two people that were like police officers or whatever, it's kind of like this work is really hard, and we kind of have to affirm each other at times, right? What were you going to say?
Let me see the board real quick.
Okay,
So, what drives individual behavior?
yes,
That goes for everyone, whether it's a job or say for instance a teenager, they don't know what behavior is until they act out and they're corrected. So in their world, whether
Yeah.
you're rich, poor, whatever, the affirmation is what people say about you or
Yes.
think about you and want to be around
Yes.
you. So it's really the love that you have for yourself and the behavior that's going on around you that makes you the person that you are. Whether it's good or bad, there's
Yes.
some type of affirmation,
Yes.
whether it's good or
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
And there's always
Yes.
some acceptance,
Yes.
whether it's good or bad.
let's use this for the community and gang activity.
That's what I was going to say. That's how the kids be getting their
Yeah.
individual
Yes.
behavior because of what they don't know or what they've been surrounded with. Then there comes the affirmation. Okay, so I'm in this gang and this is what we got to do in order for me to be affirmative or be in this particular
Yes.
adversary, and then the acceptance. Okay, I'm in now, so now I'm comfortable.
Yes.
And that's something that we need to get through these students' head. What's going on around you does not define who you are or who you're going to be.
Yes.
So stop it.
Yes. The thing about it is, the reason it's hard for them to stop it is because of the affirmation and the acceptance.
Absolutely.
If no one else is consistently giving it to them in their neighborhood, if they're in this culture and boys are constantly dapping them up. I remember talking to a young man who was in detention. He's now in Mancy, but he was in detention, juvenile detention, and I had a younger kid who was 12 years old. He wasn't even 12 at the time. I think he was like maybe 10 or 11. He was coming up in the ranks because he could fight. And he was like, no, little dude got hands on him. He got hands on him. So he was going up in the ranks, and he was getting affirmation and acceptance because he could fight, which is a necessary tool in the hood sometimes. Would you not say, James? It's a necessary tool. So now all of a sudden he was getting all of this attention. Dad's not around. Mom was working crazy hours trying to take care of 4 kids. He was getting all of this affirmation and acceptance from, which felt like love, right? And when I looked at him and said, you need to stop hanging around them, he was like, you're telling me to not be with my boys because we have this saying in our community, they got love for me. I got love for them.
But for some of it's because that is the only community, family, and it's not even community. It is the only family, interpersonal relationship
Yes.
on any level.
Yes. Yes.
Like you care about me.
Yes.
Like that one will take care of me.
I will
Your side.
yes. And I will take a bullet in. When I'm getting shot at, so are you. And when it's going
You're
down,
gonna stand in front of me when that happens.
absolutely, or I'm gonna be close
But you gotta
nearby.
go back to the crib, though. All this stuff starts at the house.
We're gonna get into that.
Go.
We're gonna get into that.
Nobody's ever said, you're great, you're good at that, what else are you good at?
Yes.
There hasn't been someone there.
There hasn't been
And
someone else.
if we can get that about that.
Yes.
Then what else are you good at?
Because what happens is that you have love tanks. There's this book called Love is a Choice, and it had the most amazing analogy. And it talked about the fact that you have love tanks, and they have to be filled by people, right? Affirmation, acceptance. They do. It's what you go out in the world. It's the what is it called in your joints when you don't have lubrication? Like, use what? Cartilage. You know how you need cartilage to move in your joints? It's what keeps your cartilage. It's love is what gets you mobile. You can move as you get older, your cartilage, goes. But my thing is that's what keeps them going. The problem is I'm not around enough. I'm going back home. Guess who they're spending most of their time getting their affirmation from? So they get a little drop from me. Hey, you could do something else. But most of the 90% of the time, this is where it's coming from. So wherever.
And family that they've created, 'cause that's all they have.
Exactly. So then we have a crazy cycle, right? And we're going to get where we're going, Flip.
Would you also go so far to say that it would not be safe for them to break their bonds with?
Oh my gosh, you make it a perfect point. Yes. I had a young man who is actually doing juvie life right now, and he looked at me in my car one time. I was driving him, and he said, how do I get out? Me and Mario had this discussion. I'm like, you get rid of guns. You get rid of your gun, and they don't get rid of their gun, and you in the Wild Wild West. You know what is really going to happen to you if that happens?
It becomes a lynching instead of a fair fight.
Right.
It's a gunfight.
Exactly. One of the kids, I think I've said this story a couple times, had a book bag, and he stopped wearing his book bags because we all know that what you have in your book bag a lot of times. And his boys was like, man, you just walking around these streets like this? He's like, yeah, I am. I'm tired of it. And his boys were like, man, this is dangerous. And I remember the conversation that they had, and I was like, I get it. So what is the complex issue? I like making complex issues simple. This is about bonding, attachment, following directions, cultural norms. So if I say bonding and attachment, talk to me about why is bonding important? I just generally, why is it important to be bonded to somebody?
That's your go-to. I mean, it's your support system, and that's somebody that you trust or something that you trust that the process is going to be positive for you.
What is the problem what is the problem with the kids that we work with? And I want you to think about yourself as well. Who were the first people you bonded to? Who did you bond to? Who traditionally should you be bonded to? Your parents. Do you need both mom and dad? Okay.
Now,
Okay. So,
Better than, I would say one that is there, like truly there.
how many out of the
Better
kids?
than like none,
Yes.
or like one that's
Yes.
a problem or whatever. But
Yes.
two that are truly there
Yes.
is the perfect.
What percentage would you say UMANOP has both parents? Out of our, we together, we probably have every day coming in and out, there's 70, 75 kids. 10%. 10%.
My clients are like 1%.
Probably 1%.
Yeah, going away at 10%.
Yeah. Because we normally have a dad that wants to be involved. I would say that James has said we had. Tell me what happens to that one parent, the 90% or the 99% of the one parent that's there, what happens to her? Number one, is it a female or a male most of the time?
female,
Female-driven home. Statistics say it's a female-driven home most of the time, particularly in our population. Tell me what happens to that mom if she's not. What is she doing?
And she loves those kids. She's doing everything she can. She working 10 jobs, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, feeding those kids, doing everything she can, taking the bus to like haul the laundry, get the clothes washed.
So how much time does she have for attachment?
none.
Well,
Them-
she's
them
not
couple
getting
minutes
killed
before she say
herself either,
goodnight.
So she's gonna be,
Okay.
she's gonna be emotionally deprived.
Got you. Got you. So if I need bonding and I need attachment, because that's how I'm getting my following directions and my cultural norms. This is the thing that's going to drive me, right? So my sons are bonded and attached. So when my husband and I introduced, we are the Fab Four, we are the Williams, this is how our house runs, they don't have to follow that. They 20 and 21. They don't even have to follow it now. They follow it because of bonding and attachment.
They're going to call you out when you're not following it.
They will call me out in a minute. They all will call me out. I told people, people be impressed, but honey, when I get home, they are over it. Yes, exactly. So they will call you out. And they can do that with bonding and attachment because they feel safe. I always say this. The truth without love, I heard this in the Netflix thing I watched, the two popes, it was like, but he said, it was amazing. He said, truth without love is too heavy.
Oh,
Yeah. He said, truth without love is too heavy, right? So I have moms who didn't have time to do the bonding and the attachment, and they give their children rules. And I do not, this makes me angry, I probably will say this, I very rarely will ever accept oppositional defiant as a disorder. You know what oppositional defiant disorder is? Why do you think I will? Most of the time I was like, I'm not labeling him that way.
They're kids.
They're kids, and they're being, and they're oppositional against an authority figure that has not really been there. So I'm not attached or bond.
Programming, it's expected,
Yeah,
expected outcome, right?
yes,
Therefore you can't call it abnormal.
yeah, this is what you're playing it.
Yeah, it's set up.
Yeah,
But we see this in our workplaces, we see this in our community, and all of these kind of things. Like in our workplaces, we see it a little bit different, but your boss is not a good leader. They're not leading from the front and
Yes.
doing all that stuff, and they say, oh, do this thing,
right,
and you're like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're a horrible boss.
You turn your back on them, you go back to your office.
Yes, and you don't
go
listen to
say
nothing
a
they
whole bunch
say.
of Stuff that we don't want anybody to know that we ever said.
Absolutely, yes.
Like, so we're oppositionally defiant just as well.
We are, because if you made a perfect point. Everybody in here who has ever had a really bad boss who you did not respect,
Yeah.
they tell you to do something and you like, yeah, right. Like, shut up. You don't even do your part,
Yeah.
right? Bonding, attachment at any level. Like, I got you. I believe in the mission of the agency and I see the leadership doing. I'm attached. I'm ready to go. I believe in what you're saying. I'm attached to what you're saying. And so I follow directions and I create a cultural norm. You see that? So with our kids, this is a complex issue, but it's very simple. They haven't bonded and there is no attachment there.
Don't like their boss.
They don't. like their boss. And so then we call them what? What do we call them? When they don't like their boss and they're acting crazy, call them hoodlums. We tell them they're rebelling. We put them in jail. We put them in prison. And they've never bonded or attached to anything. I know, we're going to make this easy. So how do you create a healthy human? I used him because he looked like maybe he was going to get married or something. So how do you create a healthy human from another healthy human?
Put in what you get out. Get
Yeah.
out what you put in.
But let's be honest. How many of us are really completely healthy humans?
Okay.
That's the problem.
You ain't have to go there.
You get what, you get what I'm saying? Right. How many of us are completely healthy humans? I laugh sometimes, and I said this to my son the other day, my baby son. I said, you scare me because you remind me of me and my flaws. They're looking at me.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah. I have those honest conversations with my kid. I did. I looked at him. I said, yeah, that's me.
But that conversation is how you become a healthy human.
That is how we have healthy conversations that get us to the place where I tell them, you are allowed to be a mess and loved in this house. You're allowed to be flawed and loved. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for accountability. I'm looking for, that's not the truth, right?
You walk up to your kids and you own it. You're like,
Right.
I'm sorry, I
But
screwed
why
up.
can't I do that?
I messed up.
What did the other slide say? What do I have with them? Why can't I do that? Why am I allowed to do that with my kids? And they listen. Bonded with them, attached to them. Right? So we have the attachment theory, right? And it talks about secure, and it's creating emotional development and self-esteem. Right? And you have social learning, which is creating observation and imitation of others, right? Of your caregiver. So we're going to look at developmental things that are going to sound very elementary, but they're necessary to understand how soon it takes. What are the most important years for kids in individual development? 0 to 3, right? So if they're not getting those things, yeah, I will. We are. So attachment and learning theory are two theories that we use a lot in my agency. Because I know that if I have a kid who's not attached, he's not going to care very much because he's learned to get attention from negative ways. So I'm going to ask you all who work with people, what do you do with kids who have it the opposite? I am going to terrorize in order to get you to better understand. I'm going to pick with James a little bit because he ran an amazing program for probably, how long did you do your after school program?
3 years.
For about 3 years. Tell me what you did when they were like dysregulated in the programs, particularly your really hard boys. Like when they would come, remember we had the discussion about suspending them? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, do the timeout, I mean, repeat offenders, then I will suspend them. But I also talk to them, let them know why.
Yes.
And I would usually see them at school and we'll reaffirm everything and they would always come, hey, this is what I'm working on. I think if they want it, they will try.
Yes. I think that what happened was I loved the program, and I got mad when he kept on suspending kids because I kept on saying, they need a hug, they need a love, they need this. But what I noticed is that the kids did not notice that they were bonded and attached until it was gone. They didn't realize it. He would suspend them, and they would beg to come back. They were realizing, oh my goodness, I want to adapt to the cultural norms because I love the way this feels. I love the fact that you are dapping me up when I come in. You're giving me a hug when I come in. You're giving me something to eat. It's a nice place. You play the game. You get what I'm getting all this affirmation. I'm getting all of this social learning. I didn't even know I needed it until it was gone. And they would beg to come back, and they would be very careful not to get suspended again. That's really what suspension in school should be doing. But what happens is it becomes punitive because you go home, hang out, and most of our kids that get suspended end up belonging to a gang or involved in activities that they shouldn't. But if we really did a follow-up on that kid, right, and they were really getting love in school and they were really getting connection in school, which is really hard to try to do in a big school. But if you could do that, can you imagine kids getting mad because they get suspended from school? Because most of our kids don't care. Do you guys know that? They don't care when they get suspended? They're happy when they're suspended? Okay. All right. So that's kind of how that is. That sometimes they don't even know they're bonded. They don't even know they need this. So I thought this was interesting, and it's kind of on there. But at 3 months, right, they should be, smiling in response, the face just showing interest in others. Because how long has it been since we've really been dealing with autism on the level that we're dealing with it? There's a lot of research. A lot of people think it's immunizations. We have all of these theories behind it. But where did this really come into play? Because it really is a social, sensory, social. What are some of your ideas about that when it comes to kids and their ability to connect now? I would love to hear people's ideas about that. Yes.
That kind of goes along with the empathy, and I think, I don't know if you and I talked about that at all, but kids aren't learning empathy, and they're not learning how to show affection, because everyone, not just the kids, but the parents are also in their screens.
Yes.
And they're talking while they're looking down. They're parenting while they're looking down at their screens.
Yes.
And you do see, and I'm somebody, I have my
Yes,
right there.
me too.
But when my kids were younger, we didn't even turn on the TV until certain times.
Yes.
I was intentional, and I think that parents can learn how to be intentional if they are able.
How old
to.
are your kids now?
Now they're 23 and 25 and older.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they.
So that generation,
Yeah.
now we have 10-year-olds,
Yeah,
11-year-olds,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So are they getting that same level of attention? Do you think that the kids now are getting, parents have the ability or are intentional, whether bumps, socioeconomics, just us as human beings in America, do you think that we are starting to feed into the idea of what's happening right now with our kids? What is our responsibility? What are we doing to create that?
I think the problem is super complex.
Let's make it simple.
Like it comes from different places. I think part of it is that there's this Gen X kids.
Okay.
Gen X people that were just left to their own devices to raise ourselves.
Okay. Tell me.
Latchkey. This is the beginning of
Okay.
latchkey kids.
Okay.
Like,
And what were we driven to? Why weren't we home?
like fend. Like it was a fend for yourself. Like,
Why?
Two parents working or one parent?
Okay.
But
And-
the loss of that.
Why did we go to two-parent working? Why did that become important to us?
So they could make it. The middle class was leaving.
Right.
So it was like.
Okay, let's talk about the middle.
It was just lost.
Okay.
Like, and then, like, they weren't fed, like, some of those basic needs as kids. Like,
Okay.
Some of that so, I think a lot of, like, that group of people, like, weren't very good
Okay.
at doing it to the next generation of children. Like we were left to our own devices and we did whatever.
So are we talking about the 70 babies who are free, the 60s?
Yeah, like I'm talking more like the.
I was born in 71, so.
Like the 70s latchkey kids, that kind of thing.
Okay.
We weren't necessarily parented. We were left to our own devices to parent ourselves.
So what is different
So
now?
we didn't parent our children, and now if you were the group of people that then, like if you're doing the every 20-year cycle of children, so then now you're creating children that are even just more dependent on nothing, no parenting, no attachment,
Okay.
that kind of thing, and then the loss of the middle class because of that, leading to more of these. What does a good relationship
Yes.
What do two
So
parents-
when they left and he was with bonding and attachment and he said, you're not coming back to camp anymore.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is this? Oh, I'm bonded and attached to
they've
Mr.
never-
James.
Like
And
they've
liked
never
it.
seen that.
And
but
liked it. Yes.
You haven't seen
Yes.
the relationship with your parents.
Yes.
Relationship
It goes back to
bond.
bonding and attachment in whether or not I listen to you.
But you also said that, keep it really simple, right? And you
Yes.
said intentional.
Yes.
And I think since the whatever, pick a date, 70s, 80s, whenever.
Right,
it was,
right.
The world got so busy, loud,
Yes.
bombard-
Complex.
constant bombardment,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
whatever it is.
Distracted.
And I think as a society, you learn from everybody you're around, whether it's your peers, your teachers,
Yes.
your
There you
parents,
go.
your neighbors, and I think we're losing intentional behavior.
Yes.
We used to go
Yes.
outside and put a cardboard
So-
box on a
Right.
Saturday, because that's what, that was.
Right.
And I
Now
have
it's,
to,
there-
I have to add on to that too.
and that's
because-
community, right?
yeah.
Intentional behavior.
And that's just,
Yes.
so
It's still-
so Tracy and I, we raised our kids pretty much together. And I was lucky, I got to be with my kids so much. I was going to school, so I was like intentional about being with them.
Yes,
too.
same.
That's not a benefit that most people have.
Yes.
So when I said that, I instantly thought, read the room, because that is not.
No, my
that
husband
is
worked
not what our-
hard for me to stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So, yeah, but.
But it's a
in our peer
talent, it's
group,
one
we
of
were
those things that you
constantly-
share.
Yes.
Or, you
Yes.
emulate because you see it in.
Yeah.
Yes.
From your neighbors, your community,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it is a valued scarcity. Right?
So when you say that, then if I said surrogate, if our community would be surrogates, right? And once I saw, he didn't know it was a case study, but I was very interested in what was going to happen with these kids that were suspended. And I think we got in a pretty heated discussion about, I did not agree with it at first. And then I saw the desire and craving for bonding and attachment rising up in the kid.
A community can raise children,
Yes,
but that's not.
but we have to be intentional.
You have to be intentional.
And-
as
and
a
can I be
community
honest?
And raise your children.
Yes, and can I be honest? You know, when we talked about the bonding and the affirmation and the love, that I'm like, I only spend 10 minutes, right? I only spend 10 minutes, I only spend an hour, with him. So I can't be the bonding and attachment. This was every single day, 3-4 hours a day is with him every day, pouring in him every day, right? How many of us have time, scarcity time? I have one girl I've mentored since she was 19, she's 37. Love her. Need to call her back right now. Love her, right? But that was a lot of time. That was dropping off diapers. That was making sure she's good. That was becoming her children's godmom. And they want to spend time with me. So when I come back, I'm going to New York for a couple of days. When I come back, I've got to go spend time with them because they want to spend time with me. And I called her mom. She's a single mom, right? I have a girl right now who decided to keep her baby. She had one she did not decide to keep. And this one, she's like, I'm keeping it this time. And I'm like, okay. But if she's going to do that, then I need to be a part of her life. Right? So I'm like, okay, do you have diapers? Do you have this? Is that exhausting? Yes. Are we as community exhausted to bond and attach? Because James said earlier, you're not getting anything back anytime soon.
Well, I feel like our communities used to be set up as. You see, like there's this tiny family unit, that our communities used to be a family.
Village.
That included the person across the street.
Yes.
So
Yes.
people, even if two parents were working,
Yes.
somebody's grandma was at home.
Yes.
And while the kids were on the street,
Somebody was looking out.
they sat out there and they watched everybody's kids
Yeah.
from the porch. And then somebody down here came out on the porch for a few minutes.
Yes.
And she raised her hand and said, hey.
But we weren't
I've got
afraid
to
of
cook
each other.
lunch.
Yes.
And so she went cook, like there was not a fear. It was
Right. Yes.
That was our family.
Yes. Yeah, the community was our family and they were allowed to parent us as such. Yes.
Okay, I keep hearing the community thing. I'm gonna kick back on the other side.
Okay.
The community thing is good, but the community didn't raise us. Not my group. We had respect for our parents, so we didn't do the things to make them look bad. It wasn't the community
Yes.
raising us. It was respect. We didn't want our parents to look bad or the word to get back.
Yeah,
Yes,
right
and I
there.
think,
Right,
and
right,
I,
right.
yes,
They didn't have to raise us.
yes.
We was being raised.
So would you say that the community kept you accountable? Because if Miss, with us, Miss Katie or
I
Miss
should say
Miss
that, yeah.
Matthews,
Right.
and I think that's what we're saying. If Miss
Yeah.
Matthews said Buffy was down here
Right,
acting up on
right.
Vale,
Oh, Lord.
yes,
Right.
and called Mother Murphy
And
on
it's
Bowman
kinda
Street,
the same way now. I mean,
Yes.
when kids in our summer camp cuss and I go tell their parents,
Yes.
oh, it's
but why? But remember when she said, who are you? Remember the one mom with the one young man, and he said, her grandma said,
she sees one in a million.
Yes.
The majority of the parents, when I tell them
yes,
your kids were just sitting here cussing in front of me like I'm, then they automatically,
yes.
because now you're being disrespectful.
And there's a way that even within what you just did was community keeping him accountable to the mom when they're not around. And I don't know if we take the time out to do what you did. I think that I've had to get on talk to some of my staff about the expectations that they have of kids. They'll just say that's just how they are. And they get tired of talking to parents. They get tired of accountability. They forget, they don't go all the time and say, hey, yesterday, Bobby was acting up and I'm just calling you to do that. Because I think as a society, we are getting to the point where we don't want to attach and bond as much as we used to. I think we're getting our energy and affirmation, and we fall into some of this narrative of where we get our affirmation, where we get our connection, where we get our thing, where we get our meaning of life from other places. And sometimes I think we get to the point where we're okay with just doing good rather than fully digging down and making sure that it's growing into something good.
Well, that is telling someone's parents. Or
Yes.
Going directly to,
Yes.
That is a correct, appropriate, safe correction.
Yes.
As opposed to,
Yes.
I'm gonna yell back at you.
Yes.
Or I'm gonna threaten you later. Or
Yes.
Do something inappropriate. You just gotta keep reinforcing, this is actually how it's supposed to be. When you do something wrong,
Yes.
I'm gonna call you out on it.
Yeah.
And
Because they might not have got it here.
And I'm gonna make you accountable, and this is actually how it's supposed to look.
Exactly.
Not I come chase you later, or
Absolutely.
Well,
Well, why?
You were at work, go and talk behind your back.
Yes.
I'm just gonna be honest.
Yes.
Straight, and that creates a different narrative of trust and.
Can everyone do that?
No.
Can someone from a different culture go talk to a mama the way that James could?
I can.
I know you can. Can everybody do a Rhonda? What is the way James is going to? Why? Why can't we just work as a community? Why is that? Is that some of the issue? Because if you look in this room, the majority of the people in this room every week do not look like, a really old Rhonda and I. They're not black and brown people. But you're here.
I think part of the problem is
The kids don't know the community leaders like they used to, but we're not out there like we used to be.
Yeah.
There's not a presence of us
Yes.
like there used to be, and that's what happened.
Yes. What is your first name?
charity.
So,
I think part of the problem is just, you have to be brave if you're gonna go talk to someone.
yes. Can I be honest with you real quick? I need to validate charity. I'm doing a dissertation, and it is on the cross-racial harmony of getting people who don't look like each other and validate. I had this lady, if you hear this, Deb Mitchell. Do y'all know Deb? She's a social worker. Deb Mitchell would get a African-American kid and be like, I'm telling her the truth, but if you tell her, she's gonna listen to you. I said, she's gonna help listen to you too. And I would look and I would validate. I would say, listen, this is Charity. She's cool. She's gonna help you. I'm like, you're not gonna have no problem. She good people. Don't be afraid. You get what I'm saying? She might not look like us, but can we have a conversation? Then what happens a lot of times is that validation, as long as you respect the space, turns into a conversation, right? That allows you to talk to people who don't look like you. And then if there is a conversation that goes on, and this is sometimes why it's important that our room looks diverse, is that you might come to James and be like, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm saying the same thing as you, but he is not, or she, or the mom is offended when I say it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough subject, because even with our son, when that go to Madison, we
Yeah.
get a call from Madison, my first thought is different culture.
Yes.
Is he really that bad, or was he just doing
Yes.
things that
Yes.
we as black people normally do, and it wouldn't be looked at as a
Yes.
second thing?
Yeah,
Yes.
that cultural appropriation
Yes.
Is
Yeah,
so
very
big.
big.
But when you're in community where it's a small population of of the minority population running it. I mean, I got a call from Madison one time and my son was leaning back in a chair and they felt threatened. I said, he's leaning back in a chair? And they were like, yeah. So we eventually had to bring in like higher ups just to leave him alone. I mean, the calls were crazy. That he called someone a potato. Somebody called him a name, and he said he looked like the inside of a potato. I mean, it was like the level of threatening that they felt threatened by anything he said or did. And I remember getting out of the meeting, I said, he was leaning back in a chair. They said, yeah, we told him twice. I said, well, my son has a tendency to regulate. He leans and rocks in his chair. I was like, he's regulating. If he's nervous or he feels like he's not, he'll regulate. So I'm trying to explain to them, you keep on calling me. When I got done with my complaint, I had a phone log of probably 2 pages of calling me over and over and over again about simple things. This is the difference between you, Charity, and
See,
them.
this is the thing, you have to call and see, like, I get myself in trouble.
Right,
Because I would probably say something
right,
in that situation.
right.
That I'd be like,
But let me
"Need some
explain.
duct tape for," because I'd just be like, I'd walk in there and I'd be like, so I understand that the problem here is he's black.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay,
But there are rarely people who feel comfortable enough with the flawness of everything that we are to say, I don't get it. Because all I need you to say is, I don't get it. There's one of my favorite scriptures that says that the reason that they're blind is because they won't admit they're blind, right? The reason you can't hear is because you won't admit you can't hear. If they ever admitted they were blind, I would make them better. And if they ever admitted they couldn't hear, that would open their ears, right?
That's why the emperor is naked.
So you get, do you understand? So there's an ego to, and I just taught a cultural diversity at OSU for undergrads, and it was the most interesting thing to hear the way that these upcoming social workers think. But one thing I had to explain to them is being comfortable with the narrative that I'm from Butler or I'm from, Crawford County, and I don't know. One lady looked at me and said, am I allowed to put my daughter's hair in braids, cornrows? She wanted to put them in 2 little braids. Is that wrong? Am I dishonoring black folks by putting, I said, she was serious. And I said, no, sweetheart. But she was open enough to ask.
She asked the question.
That part, Charity.
You were
She
hearing
asked
so
the
much about
questions.
Cultural appropriation.
Yes.
And you hear that so much.
Yes.
And I hear the word white savior enough to know that I have to be careful because I am not a white savior.
Yes.
I don't want you to become like me.
Yes.
I want to respect you from where
Yes.
you are and make you a better person.
I always say I want a fishing pole and a pond myself to catch my own fish. I don't need you to give me fish. I want my own. I want the ability to do that. So when you look at that, because we'll talk all day, like you guys always give good conversation. What we notice is that this is the best outcome, right? And what we're saying is that if these things are not, if they're not demonstrating attachment, if they're not showing empathy, I just talked to my girls about empathy. None of them knew what empathy meant. How many girls I have? It was a nice sample, 10. I think I got 9 to 10 girls, so that's a nice sample. None of them knew what empathy was. They didn't understand it. I had a little kid book that was actually for grades up to 3 to teach them empathy. I said, I know this sounds like a little kid book, but you guys have no idea what empathy is, right? So we talked about empathy, if they're not showing that. The problem is these skills are always going to be needed. Is there one thing that you see on here that you will not need? You will need this. So if they don't have them, we have to figure out. Because about time they get to school, they need these 3 things to really be able to be in school. And does everybody know the prisoner pipeline data? Okay? Our kids are not developing greater independence. They hang with their friends. They click. They skip with them. They're not going to say, I'm staying in school. I'm not going, da-da-da-da, right? Because that's where they're getting their affirmation. That's where they're getting their love. That's where they're getting their connection and bonding. Expanding social relationships. A lot of our kids don't move outside their hood. Socially, they hang with the people. Not that that's bad, but if they're, like what you said, Rhonda, if it's getting them in trouble, but it's going to get them in trouble because how can I expand my social relationship if I don't even have the language or the ability to understand and be able to say, I don't know how to do that. I don't understand that. And then are we going to go in and grab them and mentor them in a way without trying to assimilate them to the dominant culture, allowing them to be who they are? So I'm going to use this example. I think I used it. I had a person who's in the professional school, and she says, I've noticed a lot of my minority kids don't know chutes and, like a lot of kids don't know chutes and ladders. And I'm like, well, I didn't really play chutes and ladders. And she says, well, maybe we should go and buy chutes and ladder games for them and teach them how to play chutes and ladder. And I was like, no, why don't you ask them what do they play? If they play Uno, if they play spades, if they play, why don't you get what they play? And use that as a way of a lot of our special need kids. We use different, things to manipulate and help them understand and see where they are cognitively. But why don't you get what they use, right? Rather than taking them and assimilating them to your culture to make you more comfortable in what you already understand.
Which really just becomes another example to them of how you can't relate to them.
Right. Right.
Not they can't relate to you.
Yes.
Relate to me.
Yes.
Normalizes the fact that they're
Yes.
the outcast in it, so we
Yes.
build those relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then understanding and expressing emotions. Do different cultures understand and express emotions differently?
Of course we do.
Yeah, we do. What's up, girl? Uh-huh. What's happening? I do that when I'm with my girls. Girl, you cute. I see you. Right? Right? It's a whole nother way of expressing emotions. So I have gotten teachers. I have great teacher stories. I have a girl who a little boy was picking on, and when I found out it was actually my little cousin, he was picking with her, and I knew from James summer camp, that he had a crush on her from last year. I was like, yeah, he's had a crush on her for a while. But she stood up like, don't make me take my earrings off.
Oh, boy.
But she was playing, like she literally was laughing. I said, so the teacher said, and put her in for bullying. She was written up for bullying. Yeah, and sent to the little suspension, and mom was heated. And I said, well, did she flip tables? They said, no. I said, what'd she do? I said, did she raise her voice? She said, no. She just act like she was like, I'm gonna get you, da, da, da. And the teacher says, well, she's so aggressive. She's so aggressive. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Aggressive, safety, there's safety concern. She's a safety concern. And I said, has she ever even been in a fight before?
She's gonna be a leader if she's standing up in class doing something like that and telling that little boy leave her alone.
Yes.
That little girl's gonna be a leader someday.
Oh, is she ever, Charity?
So we
I
need
have
to
her.
educate her and promote her
Yes.
and put her in charge.
But you're doing that with the idea that you are not trying to change a narrative. You have a positive narrative. We're always trying to make our truth true, right? So if I think that all criminals are black men, then I try to make my narrative such. But if I'm open-minded and been through cultural diversity, or if you've been a police officer in the law ever long, you know that's not true, right? But there are a lot of people who believe that when the school system, we have, Officer Brewster, I think it is, who's in our schools, who is walking around fully geared. Gun, full vest, bulletproof vest. In a way, he's gotta be like that, because that's the atmosphere we've created to some extent. Right? So if I'm not saying that safety officers should not be there, but I'm saying safety officers should not be there if we are not creating a narrative of this is not what you need. So when I was doing my research, I found out that most teachers felt that black students needed punitive measures to act right, and that white children needed affirmations and redirection to act right. And PBIS, if anybody knows about PBIS, shows that that's not true, right? That we do respond to positive affirmations and rewards just as well as everyone else. Yes, exactly. The human race responds to positive love and kindness.
Or humans on the way to being made.
Absolutely.
Unhealthy humans.
But if you are afraid, and if you have watched a narrative, and if you have not come to a training that looks like this, and if you have not taken the time out to do that, then it would be a problem. What population do you work with? What is your type? What do you do? Yes. I knew it was something with police. So head of detective. And you notice that there's all kind of, it's a whole rainbow that gets in trouble, right? So he knows that this narrative is right. He probably has done detective things and been surprised at where he's landed. Have you ever been surprised? Like, oh, okay, that was, yeah. It's like, oh, it's the little lady. I remember one, Andy Griffith. Right. I like Andy Griffin. It's just the same for me. But one time they were looking for who had the steal, and it was two old ladies. Did you watch that one? Yeah. And it was these two older white ladies. You would have never thought that, right? So Otis is still drunk. It's like, why is he still drunk, right? So but the narrative, right? It was hard for them to look outside of the narrative of who they would think would do something like that, right? You have a different narrative. You've evidently been exposed to diversity and opened your heart to diversity, but everyone doesn't think that way. Unfortunately, that makes you mad. So we have been dealing with self-determination theory, and I'm just kind of not going to go over this, but autonomy, being that everybody, I'm just going to go over it quickly, I guess I am going over it, but quickly, but autonomy is the need to feel that you're in control of your own life, right? And what population in America kind of feels like they don't have control of their own lives, historically.
Say that again.
Historically, what population of people in America have not had control over one's own actions or choices, particularly choices?
Blacks, Latinos.
Yes. I always said, my Latino brothers and sisters, when I read the data, I'm like, we minds would come on together.
For real though.
And wait, what were you? Like, it's Latino and Black Americans.
Anybody that doesn't look like white men.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. So when you deal with autonomy, historically, I have heard stories, and I went down to Mississippi last summer, and my mom, I'd say this story because it's so funny. I think I said this before. You guys heard this before. My mom is, I'm not going to tell how old she is, but she's old enough. And she told me, she's like, girl, you packing something to take down there? I was like, Mom, why would I pack something? I can eat anywhere I want to eat. But she was like kind of odded, like a little weirded out. I was going to Mississippi, and my husband's family lives down there. They're amazing. I was like, but it was funny because she had told me, and I was like, Mom, she says, I have not been down there since Jim Crow has been lifted. She had not been down there. My mom had not been down south since Jim Crow, and she said the last time I was down there, I almost got in trouble for drinking at the wrong water fountain. She said, and Big Mama grabbed me up and said, girl, what are you doing? You're about to get us in trouble. Right?
It wasn't that long ago, actually.
No, it wasn't.
ago.
So my mom said when they traveled down south, they couldn't eat anywhere. So you would pack a lunch because you had to go to certain gas stations. You had to go to certain eating restaurants. Your path was like the Underground Railroad, right? My mom, I'm standing here, my mom, right? Right? So I'm looking and saying autonomy and the ability to make your own choices has really only been probably maybe a generation for us. Because my parents, this generation, I'm, in my 50s, they were affected by Jim Crow. They were part of the Great Migration moving up here, right? So those are the stories that are in my head, right? So when I went down there, I was a little bit like James goes down there, like, so he was like, babe, but I had never been down to Mississippi. Haven't been past Tennessee. We are second generation up north. Right? So autonomy, as you teach this generationally for African Americans, might feel different, and they might feel that way now that they can't go anywhere and everywhere. I remember I don't know if it was you, somebody had told me that they tell their son to be careful too when he's driving in the car and giving them rules. Well, my son's, it's really that way.
But the white people down there are only second generation too, right? So a lot of them probably aren't quite solved yet.
Oh, right, right. Yes. The narrative, yes, the narrative. But what I was amazed of is how many supervisors, like even in Kroger, their pharmacist, their head pharmacist was African American. Like they have like black folks down there doing, but I think it's maybe still segregated to some point. It's still segregated, but it's more equally segregated. They have not, when I did my research, it was like they wanted to use the word assimilating, like we're gonna assimilate, but whites were so uncomfortable with it that they had to say desegregation. Because anything that sounded like we were blended, because 40,000 teachers lost their jobs when Jim Crow went because they were not gonna let black teachers teach white kids. Yeah, and it's still like that. Yeah. So I only say that to say that autonomy is going to look different culturally. Competence, the need to feel capable and effective, that is one thing you need. Readiness, belonging, and if you come back again, we'll kind of go over some of that. I want to go to this. What time is it? Okay, I got to get through this. I don't keep us over. So traumatized school-age children, right? And I'm kind of want to go into this because you will see this regressive behavior in adults. Sometimes I see, they don't talk in bed wet, but I do have a 12-year-old that still has that from trauma. But seeking comfort and security, there's some odd things that I will see traumatized adults do to seek comfort and security. I mean, I was watching catfishing. What is it called? Is that it? Catfish. I see from a therapeutic point of view, I'm just going to watch just to see like how they go. Seeking comfort. There was a traumatic story that happened. She had been sick and all this kind of stuff. And the guy that showed up, I was like, girl. I was like, girl, right? So my thing is, but she was seeking comfort and security. Why? Because it is a human need. It's a human need. And there's scarcity in this area for some people, right? And then you have lack of language expressing. Anybody who's been in my trainings know that one of the biggest issues with African American males that get in trouble with police is that they lack language to express through aggression. They express through aggression, right? And they have been labeled that way. I had a kid who was pretty brilliant. I'm not even going to tell him out, but he said pretty soon if you start treating them like they're in a zoo, they do act like a monkey. They act like they're crazy. They act like an animal, right? With that narrative keeps on going on. Withdrawal and social isolation. This is a big thing. When you have been traumatized, you read facial expressions wrong. Remember that. You read facial, it's hot. Is it hot in here to y'all? Okay, all right, I'm sorry. That you will read, it might just be me in my 50s, honey. But withdrawal from social isolation. So you avoid contact, avoid engaging in peers. How does social media feed into that? It's very easy to talk smack and get likes and filter. Because some people get filtered, I see them, I'll be like, you need to stop that. Don't filter. Because I'm really going to see the real you. I might filter, but it's not on purpose. So, because sometimes your phone just helps you look better. I was like, is that me? They going to see, that's it. They going to see me and be disappointed, honey. So sleep disturbance, overall emotional, the biggest issue that we have with kids with ADHD is that they don't get sleep. They don't sleep. They don't sleep. So, right, you have an amygdala. I think I talked about this before. I'm going to hurry through this. But your amygdala is in your brain. These are two issues that happen with you when you go through trauma, your amygdala and your hippocampus. I'm going to run through this real fast. The reason your amygdala does, it processes your emotions. So that means that if I am in a neighborhood that is constantly stressed, I am always going to have a fear and threat response. That is why I tell teachers, if you touch a kid from the hood, know their story, and I mean hood can be, don't have to be black, but hood, they're in stress, and you touch that kid from the shoulder, you're going to get a fear and threat response. Don't touch them. Matter of fact, get close to them and get where they are and simply say, what happened to you? What happened? What's going on? How can I help? Right? Because you have to first let them know there's nothing to fear and they're not threatening you.
Right.
It's just easy stuff. They have exaggerated fear responses and heightened emotional reactions. They have chronic and severe trauma leading to long-term changes in their emotional regulation and then post-traumatic syndrome disorder. Yeah, did I say that right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. You have emotional regulation and PTSD. So when your PTSD was originally for the military. But why is it appropriate for us? Because a lot of our kids live in war zones. It's chronic and acute, and it's constant. So it's always feeling like they're in stress. I asked my teacher in my undergrad at Case Western, what can I do for kids who are in acute and chronic stress? And she told me, I have no answer for you yet. We have not figured that out. They don't know what to do. It's like, because it affects the brain neurologically. So how many of our kids that we work with are on medication? Right. I had a teacher in front of me. It was so inappropriate. I was at a school. I'm not even going to say what the school was. And she was like, why isn't he not on his medicine? Why did you bring him in? I'm like, you're not allowed to say that. That is breaking HIPAA. And she said it in front of she was in the attendance office and said it in front of everybody in the attendance office. You taking him to the doctor, she's bringing him down. You take him to the doctor to get his medicine, right? Because I don't want to cope with this. Right? So your hippocampus, that's the other part. It is critical for encoding and retrieving short-term and long-term memory. I want to talk about cultural responsiveness. Why is it important that you talk to someone in their language when they've been in trauma? When it comes to their long-term and short-term memory.
Because if you don't, they become defensive.
Right.
Or they'll go in.
They can't relate to what you're saying. That's why when Mr. James go up to them and say, what's up? What's happening? What's going? Because you have to think, if this is why, and I used this example last time, if I do a story and it's not culturally responsive and I say, Johnny went to the lake this weekend with his parents and his grandparents, and they were 50 yards from the bank, and they got on in their boat and they went 50 more. Where were they? Why don't they understand that? Because first of all, they're imagining, what in the world is a lake house? It's nothing in memory. But if you say,
You lost him a long time ago in that story.
they're like, lake house, people go to lake, you got a different house than this house, right? But if you say, Jamal went to the store and bought, with his grandmama, and they bought, a pound of greens, and then she went and bought another pound, she bought collard greens, and then brought some turnip greens. How many greens did they have all together? Because grandmama liked to mix collard and turnip. He understands that story. He's got a memory. He see my grandmama's pot in his head. Just when I say that, I see my grandmama's kitchen on Bowman Street. Just me saying that story reminded me of my grandmama, because she had a garden and she used to pick greens in front of me. My memory goes right to it, so I don't even have to think about it. I'm now thinking about, okay, how many bushels is this? Because I have a memory that connects to the story. So kids who have a hippocampus and it's hard for them to retrieve new memories, you're giving them a new memory because they have nothing to connect what you're saying to what you're, everybody get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's why cultural responsiveness is important. Okay, I'm going to move along. We're going to talk about emotions. Oh, I want to get here. I love adultish. I am adultish. My husband is best at teaching me how to like have fun. He's a big kid. I went through a lot of trauma, so I really stopped playing at probably like 5 or 6 years old. I stopped playing a lot. So I had to learn how to play. And one thing I want to say to you who all work in this field, and I'm telling you, particularly, I tell police officers all the time, like, you guys need, like, to really do stuff. But people in social services, people who are working with people constantly, don't forget yourself to learn how to play. I'm going to go over some stuff, and I hope you pick one of them to do. Because if you're sitting around and all you do is combat issues constantly, and your whole narrative is, I got to fight the next person, I got to do this, I got to help, and you're never, ever having fun yourself, then if you're not engaging in playful activities, then you're going to have secondary trauma, and you will not be practicing what you're about to tell your parents to do. Because your tank is going to be empty. So when I go over the next ones, I'm going to talk about playful activities that reduce stress levels and promote feelings of relaxation and well-being, right? Play allows adults to take a break from their daily responsibilities and challenges, offering mental and emotional release. You want mental and emotional release? I'm about to tell you what to do. I'm about to tell you to go have fun. No, we might get into that. Here we go, just for you. Deep breathing. Now let me tell you how you make deep breathing fun. Most of us don't know whether or not we're breathing. Go to the dollar store and go get some bubbles. I just challenge you. Next time you're in the dollar store or around, go get a pinwheel or go get bubbles. Because if you don't enjoy deep breathing, it's because you're really not breathing. If it's not helping your brain, because everyone has oxygen, everybody breathing in here, most of us don't. This is what we do. We pant like puppies in heat. Okay, all right, I got to do the next thing. Okay, I'm on a checklist. Okay, I got to do that. I got to get that report in. That's what we're doing most of the time, right? So my thing is that if you want to at any time deal with your increased heart rate and your muscle tension, you have to breathe. It's the way our bodies are made. It's the way God created us. I can't help that. So get bubbles. I just challenge you. When you get some bubbles and you breathe, you're going to be like, not one bubble came out of here. Pinwheels. Pinwheel is another thing. Get pinwheels. Guess what this is going to do? Reduce physical stress and increase you can calm your mind and reduce physical stress responses such as an increased heart rate and muscle tension. What do you think increased heart rate does to you? What hormone is going through your body? Cortisol. And all I'm telling you is to go buy some bubbles and breathe. Yeah. Have you the pinwheel? You said what now?
To get the oxygen that we don't breathe
Yes.
in, whatever little bit we got.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And get it popping. Mindful activities. This gets on my nerves too, but I was telling Melissa that when we first started meditation with our kiddos, it was funny because it took us 20 minutes to get them to calm down because we're working with kids that have a lot of stimuli issues. And now it takes us, at the end of the year, it's been, I think we did 6 months. I think we started in August. Now it takes us about 15, 10 minutes. And 3 of our kids have fell asleep during meditation. We were so proud of the sleep. Like, we were like, yes. They shut their mind down, right? And they fell asleep. So this takes time. This is a skill. But being able to renew your mind goes back to hope. Like, really being able to think about hopeful things. Like, if it takes you 15 minutes to find an energy where you are being hopeful and you're like, no, this is really going to work out, and it takes you that long to find it, then you have married your brain with your job and all of the trauma, and that trauma is running your life. So if you never can take 10 minutes, this is a practice, and make your brain take that out, and all you can see is waterfalls, or all you can see is ocean, and all you can see. If you can't do that, you have to gain that skill, because the negativity, you're watering weeds. And we don't want those to grow. We want to water flowers. Right? So whatever you water, it grows. Grounding. Grounding is a little different from meditating. It includes understanding your environment and feeling senses. So this normally happens outside, so you want to feel the wind, you want to feel something of that sort. I'm going to hurry up. Co-regulation. This is funny because what I tell my staff is you're co-regulating with a kid. You're not regulating them, you're co-regulating. Who in your life co-regulates you? He told me the other day, babe, that was impulsive. I was annoyed, but it has changed the whole way I do things. Because you have to let that person check you in a way. Yeah, it was impulsive. It's like, what? I was annoyed. It's like, but he's true, he's right. And you come home from your job, and you're just trying to get things done, you get irritated, you do something impulsive, like, oh, forget it, I'm just gonna, right? I'm just gonna, right? I'm telling you, to help your marriage, help your relationships, right? Learn to find out who that person is, right? Calm corner, soothing activities, coloring, listening, calming music. And if you don't have a friend who will tell you, girl, get off this phone and go breathe. Get off this phone and calm down. I don't agree with that. If you don't have a friend like that, you don't have a co-regulator. Art therapy is good. Being creative. When's the last time you colored? When is the last time you made something? When's the last time someone had a crayon in their hand? In here. Go get some smelly markers.
I'm picking it up, right?
Right, picking it up off the floor, right.
I'm with her.
Yeah, yeah. When's the last time you colored something?
I actually use that one, and yeah.
It works.
My adult coloring
Yes.
books are like-
How about detective? When's the last time you colored? It's been a while. Get a crayon. How about go outside and play? How about movement? When's the last time you went outside and played? Who in here been outside and played? Who is? I know. I'm really like yesterday. Who's been on? Who's been on the swing? When's the last time you been on the swing? Right. When's the last time you laughed from your literal gut over something that was just absolutely healthy and funny? Good. How about you? Laughed? Hilariously?
I laugh all the time. so
Me too.
That's a good one.
I'll bust
Yes.
a minute out.
Good. Going outside, laughing, being a part of nature is going to create a narrative that when some of us it's hard to ground because we don't even remember the last time we looked outside, just sat outside. So we don't have a tree in our mind or a waterfall or a river or a lake to even remember the sand, what it feels like under our feet. There's a therapy that says taking off your shoes and walking on things that are textured literally heals neurologically your brain. That's how easy, I'm a believer, so I use God, so offends you, sorry. You have to. But that's how God created our brain in a way, for me, to really honestly heal. Your feet touching ground and feeling texture literally heals your inner person. Is that crazy? There's statistics behind that. Puzzles are great. We are puzzles. Game night. What family has game night in here? Taco Tuesday? Anything? Yeah? If you don't, I'm giving you cooking. I don't know why these are everywhere, but cooking and baking. Yeah, I know. I already know. I tried some other recipes not too long ago, and then I changed the way I fry my chicken too, and it's really good. So I brought out the old Crisco. It makes a difference. So I know it's not good for you, but it's good. But you know, hosting a competition with your family or friends, having sweet night where everybody brings sweets over. Okay, you try mom's recipe. I'm gonna try mom's recipe that mom used to make or grandmom used to make. We're gonna put it on the table and we're gonna see who's best. Nobody's gonna tell, blind thing. We're gonna go and as a family have fun. Yeah. We have to enjoy life. We cannot spend our life helping everybody. And then when we die, we be like, oh, I got to go now. But don't forget that her case study is stupid. Dumb. Just dumb, right? So here we go. So baking, cooking contests within the family would be fun. Music and dance. Music is so, who in here has earbuds at work? Take some earbuds at work, and if they have a problem, say, I was working with a therapist and she told me to get them. When you feel yourself not breathing, put in earbuds and get your bubbles and meditate and blow. Because you guys are amazing people in here, and I want to keep you, but you're not going to be able to be creative. You're not going to go for the long run if you do not learn to really take care of yourself. So I thought I would give you some stuff to take care of yourself. All right. Am I 1 o'clock yet, you guys? I should be there. 1?
You have 4 more minutes.
Fantastic. See, I love when the plan works together. Power of free play and self-regulation. Free play, it's sometimes, my husband would love this, and he's going to quote me on this, so I'm sorry, I'm about to say it in front of him. Sometimes don't schedule what you're doing. Wake up in the morning and just be like, I'm going to do whatever fun thing comes to my mind. And let that creative part of your brain go. And if you have an organized wife, it's going to drive her bazonko. But say, this girl told me that we should, if your partner is organized and you're the organized one, like I don't like going out of town without a hotel that I know that I like to stay in, because I don't like staying in raggedy ones. But sometimes he wants to jump in the car. No, don't make any reservations. We're just going to drive until we tired. And the whole time I'm thinking like, oh my God, where can I stay? So I'm on my phone with my app. Where is the nice, you know what I mean? But really, really, because what it does is it creates the fact of hope and trust. There's some times where we don't have hope because we haven't gone out there deep enough to get hope. Everything we do, we control, right? Oh yeah, I'm going to have a hotel. I'm going to know where I'm going. And it's all controlled. But really creating this level of really hope that things are going to work out is sometimes the ability to just have free play and be like, that was an amazing day and it just happened. Wow, that was great. I didn't plan it. Just look, I ended up over here and I ended up over here and I ended up doing this. This is amazing, right? That's how all things some kind of way work together, right? Yeah, it's a freedom. We become so, and self-regulation, right? Understanding when you're at your 10 so that you can have better decision-making, problem-solving, emotional regulation, self-control, and creativity and imagination. I'm real big on creativity and imagination. Whose life sometimes feels stale? I can just feel like, it's because you're not doing anything.
Not mine.
I know. And it needs to be positive with the, and I'm sure yours is, with the right things. I'm not talking about busy work. I'm talking about creative where your stomach kind of blows because you're like, oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm about to do this, right? And sometimes we're not doing that because we're not creative enough to come up with something that makes us feel that way because we have not stopped long enough because we're distracted by stupid stuff. Got it? All right. Go be amazing. Thank you.
Great reminders, yeah.
You're welcome.